Hey, JK here. I want to thank you for sharing part of your day with me. For day 9, we're heading to the zoo, as we're going to be heading to talk about the Kansas City Royals. They came up just short, as did the Chiefs did this past year. But for the first time since 2015, the Royals did make it to the playoffs. They were able to make it into the wild card round with an 86-76 record, the same as the Tigers. And in the wild card round, they were able to sweep the Orioles 2-0. Then they ran into the absolute best team in the entire world, the New York Yankees. And then they lost in 4 games there. But they absolutely had a great year. And as if there was anything to really say else about Mr. Bobby Witt Jr., mentioned it the other day, teams are doing very well, and the Royals are doing well with Bobby Witt. In fact, so he led the team in everything except stolen bases and strikeouts, which was Mr. Salvador Perez, who again is on another level when it comes to veteran players and catchers. But now that we have talked about how good Bobby Witt Jr. is, let's just say a few more little tidbits about him. And not only did he lead his own team in multiple categories, but he led the entire Major League Ball Club collection in both hits and average. So this man kind of knows how to play ball. Someone else who knows how to play ball is Salvador Perez. Now, I wouldn't say his resurgence is comeback player of the year worthy, nor do I want to say his play fell off, as in was no good anymore, because he's always been an amazing catcher. His batting average did dip to 230, 240 for a few years there, but 2004 was a different year for him. He played in his most games since 2021. 2021, he played in 161. 2024, he played in 158. There are only 162 regular season games. And of course, they won the 2 wildcard games. Then they lost in 4. So of the 162 plus the 2, 164 plus the 4, 168, he started 158 of the 168 this year. That's impressive, especially for someone who is later in their career. Now, I'm not saying he's going to play until he's 50, but I do think he could push at least 40, because the Royals could absolutely move him from behind the plate to DH, or if he still wants to be in the field, play first. So again, Salvador Perez, built different. You go from one star who's been in the league more than a decade and has transcended what it means to be a catcher, to be successful, especially late in his career. Now we're going to talk about 2 guys who are very young into their career, 2 and 3 years respectively, full-time, who just had a slip up. Now, let me preface with, these guys are still more talented than I am. These guys have done more with their life than I have. And these guys are absolutely individuals who you could and very well should see on your fantasy teams. Obviously, depending on how deep it is. Now, if you got a 4-man league, no, you're not going to sniff these guys. But if you're in a 20-man league, I could see these guys being useful, even as few as maybe 12 to 14. But I digress. Let's talk about him. Markel Garcia had a pretty good year in 2023. He had some home runs, so several bases. I think he had 24 bases. He also had like a 260 batting average. So first full time in the league, was stealing bases, was absolutely atop a lineup that did some work. Still had some pieces that had to come together. But 2024 should have been a great year for him to take that next step. He didn't. Now, he played more games, so he had more at-bats, so he had a few more runs, he had a few more hits. Actually, he had like 30 more runs, so that is a testament to hitting in front of old Vinny, old Bobby, old Salvi. His stolen bases also went up, but in order to get a stolen base, you have to get on base. And with a 220 batting average and a 281 on-base percentage, you're probably not going to benefit a whole lot from being a contact hitter when you are only hitting that paltry level. Now, he dropped his on-base percentage by 40 points. Dropped his batting average by 40 points. That's not how you, one, are going to stay in the lineup with your bat. And his 15 errors at third base, definitely not how you're going to stay on the field with your glove. So the Royals are going to need him to step up. They did bring in a few players like Jonathan India. Love that man. He's my man crush. But he's going to be wanting to start at second. They have a few other guys who can start at third, so he is going to have to step up. Markel Garcia is going to have to step up if he wants to stay in this lineup, because it's not like they have to get him in there because of his bat. They want to get him in because of his speed. that could relegate him to a pinch runner. We're going to transition to another player who needs to get his bat more in the game. His glove looks pretty good. However, MJ Melendez was absolutely terrible at the plate in 2024. He fell off the face of the earth. Literally dropped in every single category. And dropping stats is not going to help the fact that MJ Melendez lost catcher eligibility after the 2023 season. So now he is in a void of outfielders that you can select. However, there are plenty of others that have an average higher than 206 and an OBP that is even lower than Markel Garcia at 273. Markel Garcia's was 281. MJ Melendez is 273. Those two guys are still only like 25 and 26, and there's a lot of baseball in front of them, but they have to get their bats going. Speaking of guys that are absolutely ready to step up and make some plays, second baseman Michael Massey and outfielder Kyle Isbell. Michael Massey is absolutely someone who can step up and give Jonathan India a run for his money, potentially moving India to short, which there's a guy named Bobby Witt Jr. there, so he's probably not going to play there. But there is then also a subpar player in Michael Garcia at third. So could India move to third? Could Massey move to third? Massey added several home runs, I believe 14. So he has a little bit of power to go with his ability to play second and other infield positions, but ideally second. Kyle Isbell is an outfielder who isn't sexy. He was hitting about 230, but he did quietly and sneakily steal 11 bases. So, MJ Melendez, you're screwing up. We can bring this guy who has a higher batting average and steal some bases in, and you can ride the bench. As we move from good young hitters who just need more patience at the plate, more contact with the ball, and of course using two hands when fielding, we're going to move into some grizzled veterans, or at least some guys who have a little bit of adversity so they can appreciate the success they're having now. Of course, we're talking about Cole Reagans, we're talking about Michael Wacha, and then Seth Lugo. The first pitcher we're going to talk about is Seth Lugo. He was a pitching prospect in New York before he moved to the bullpen, was electric and was the gap between the relievers getting to the closer and had holds galore. Then he wanted to move back to the starting rotation, mainly because the Mets needed it. Didn't fare as well as he would have liked, was shipped off to the Padres, did decent there, and now he's with the Royals. The last 2 years, he's had over 60 starts, 350 plus innings, and 310 plus strikeouts. While his co-ace, Cole Reagans, started in Texas, the Rangers did not see him as a prospect that they could keep going with, as he did have a 5 and/or 6 ERA in his first 2 years. They shipped him over to the Royals, where he absolutely hit the ground running. With not as many starts as Lugo with only 44 or innings pitched with only 250, he does have close to the same number of strikeouts at 310. Both these guys, Lugo and Mr. Cole Reagans, are both absolutely frontline starters. There are a few other pitchers behind them that can do very well, including Michael Wacha. Now, he has spent the last 6 years with 6 different teams. 2025 will be the first time he has been with a team for more than a year, before he was traded from the Cardinals, where he spent the first several years of the season. Now, Michael Wacha absolutely had a good year with a sub-3 ERA, a 1.19 whip, and some quality wins and starts. Going from a grizzled veteran in Michael Wacha to a second-year player in Alec Marsh. Alec Marsh improved several of his numbers in his second full year, although an injury did limit his time later in the year. He did start 25 games and had 9 wins, had some quality starts, but also improved his ERA by 1 whole point and lowered his whip by 0.3 of a point. That doesn't sound like a lot, but that's absolutely more than enough to get you a spot in the rotation. However, there are a few other guys fighting for it, including newly acquired Ross Stripling and Chris Bubik. Well, that's enough about the starting rotation. Let's get to the bullpen. I really like this bullpen. The names aren't sexy. The names are not ones that you would think of like, oh yeah, that guy's really good. But these guys are quality guys. These guys come from other organizations that may not have had as much success. Hunter Harvey came from the Nationals. Lucas Ursech came from the Athletics. Then you have newly acquired closer, or you would think he's going to be the closer, Carlos Estevez, came from the Angels. So all 3 of these guys have a little bit of closer experience or more. They also have been in high leverage situations. Those 3 guys in particular, along with some of the other guys that have already in Kansas City, this is a very strong bullpen. It may not look sexy, it may not sound sexy, but I really, really want pieces of this bullpen. Now, as we talk about pieces of the bullpen, we talked about additions, including Carlos Estevez. We're now going to get to other additions. Now, they didn't do a ton, but the Royals did enough that I think they're going to be even more competitive. And whenever you have individuals like Vinny P, Bobby Witt, of course, we can't forget Salvi, leading the charge, they're going to do some work. In a trade with the Reds that sent Brady Singer to Cincinnati, the Reds then sent over Brady Weimer and Mr. Jonathan India. Jonathan India is absolutely going to be a vital piece of this infield. He was willing to play the outfield last year, but Matt McCain did get hurt in Cincinnati, so that might have been a blessing in disguise because India has a knack for getting on base and doing what he can with his speed, but also has some power. So I really like him as an addition to this infield, giving a little bit more competition and flexibility, really. Now, we already talked about Carlos Estevez. We also need to touch on the fact that they brought in recently Ross Stripling, who is going to be competing for that last spot. Was last really seen doing work with the Dodgers. As far as departures go, Brady Singer really is the biggest name. However, departure from baseball is Mike Moustakas. He has retired after 13 seasons. It was good to see him play. Glad he was able to win a World Series. Tomorrow we're going to be heading to Believeland to talk about the Cleveland Indians, who still play at the J. I am absolutely excited to talk about them because let's be real, another great player, not only for the game of baseball, but of course for the Indians. J. Ram, still doing it after the age of 30. Again, this man is a living legend. This is J. Cake, and I want to thank you for sharing part of your day with me.